no accountability. Instead, they give us excuses and apologies, but the time for self-regulation is over. Today, we will be discussing a number of pieces of legislation that will build a safer internet. Last week, I introduced the FTC Whistleblower Act with my colleague, Representative Trahan. This bill protects from retaliation current and former employees who blow the whistle to the Federal Trade Commission from retaliation, and it incentivizes the disclosure of unlawful activity. It's a critical step toward a more safe internet. The Algorithms Justice and Online Platform Transparency Act from Representative Matsui prohibits algorithms from discriminating against certain consumers. The Kids Act from Representatives Castor, Clark, Trahan, and Wexton ban online practices that exploit young people. The Social Media Data Act from Representative Trahan and Castor provide transparency into how digital ads target consumers. The Bipartisan Detour Act from Representative Rochester and Gonzalez prohibit large online platforms from using, quote, dark patterns, unquote, to trick consumers. So this subcommittee can create an internet that is better and safer, and make sure that consumers are protected, that we protect our children, that is transparent and holds bad actors accountable. And with that, I want to give a hearty welcome and a thank you to this wonderful panel that is here, including one, I guess, that is here remotely with us. Thank you very much. And the chair now recognizes the ranking member, my friend, Mr. Bilirakis, for ranking member of the subcommittee, for his 5 minutes of an opening statement.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate it so very much. Good morning to everyone. Yes, I am.
Pull it close.
Yeah. I want to thank my colleagues for their interest to improve transparency and increase protection online. There are a lot of initiatives under consideration today, and all of them raise issues that deserve our attention. Legislation brought forth by my friend in the majority would require the FTC to issue new rules and regulations, and would grant the FTC with additional enforcement tools to reduce dark patterns, discriminatory algorithms, as you said, Madam Chair, harmful content directed at children, and would also grant new rights for consumers to take control of their data. I hope that means this is a precursor and not a substitute, and we've discussed this with the chairperson, for passing a national privacy and data security law. That is the best and most comprehensive way Congress can protect our constituents through these means. That's my opinion. I think many of the issues we will be discussing today can and should be a part of that larger privacy and data security discussion, and I sincerely hope my colleagues will join me in that effort. I'll say to my fellow colleagues that my door is always open, and we have a great relationship with the chairperson. Please don't hesitate to come and talk to me and give us some input on this particular issue. Earlier last month, Republican leader Rogers released draft legislative language for the Control Our Data Act, or CODA, which would create one national standard for privacy and data security, establish clear rules of the road for businesses to be able to comply, and give every American equal data protections regardless of the location of their home. I, for one, certainly want to see rules that are clear and easy to understand for my constituents, and I'm sure you do too. I also want to assure that the FTC Bureau of Privacy that was included in our proposal has the appropriate staff and resources to enforce the national law. I hope the panel agrees today that there are elements of all these bills that can be incorporated in some fashion in this framework to ensure we leave behind a legacy that will benefit every American. That's the goal. We must also take seriously the threat from China. And moving forward on these two bills today is an important step towards holding them accountable. The legislation before us will provide Americans with greater transparency into the application and websites they use online. H.R. 3991, the TAIL Act, led by Representative Duncan, would inform users if their information is stored in China and whether the information is acceptable by the CCP or a Chinese state-owned entity. H.R. 4000, the Internet Application ID Act, led by Representative Kinzinger, would require websites and online users or distributors of mobile applications that are located in China or owned by the CCP to disclose that location or ownership to users. Both bills are very reasonable as far as I'm concerned. For those asking why we didn't invite a witness in today's hearing that has ties to China to share their views, you should know we absolutely did. We used one of our witness slots to invite TikTok to testify, but unfortunately they declined the invitation. Madam Chair, I hope we can work together to invite them before the subcommittee in the near future, just as Senators Blumenthal and Blackburn did in the Senate. There were many questions left unanswered in that hearing in the Senate last month on the stewardship of their platform, and I'm confident that the panel today can shed light on our shared concerns. Thank you so very much for being here. There are very important matters our subcommittee is examining today, so I thank the chair for holding this hearing again, and I thank the ranking member, the full ranking member, and to the witnesses again for being here today. We really appreciate it. I look forward to your testimony on these bills and other proposals we have publicly circulated for this committee's review, and I yield back. Thank you.
Ranking Member on the House Energy and Commerce Subcommittee on Consumer Protection and Commerce, Representative Gus Bilirakis, Republican of Florida. The chair of this subcommittee is Representative Jen Schakowsky, Democrat of Illinois. Again, this is a House Energy and Commerce Subcommittee on Consumer Protection and Commerce hearing on big tech transparency and internet safety.
Thank you, Mr. Bilirakis. Thank you, Mr. Bilirakis. And before I invite our the chairman and ranking member of the committee for their opening statements, let me just say I'm very excited and optimistic. We have had a real good history of working together in this subcommittee to get legislation not only introduced and passed, and I know last week we also sent you something on a proffer on a privacy bill. I'm very confident that we're going to be able to work together and get that done, and I agree with the urgency that you're projecting today and share it with you, and look forward to moving ahead rapidly. And now let me recognize the great chair of this full committee, Frank Pallone, for his opening statement.
Thank you, Chairwoman Schakowsky. Today's hearing is the second of two hearings on legislative reforms to hold social media companies accountable. And following last week's hearing examining possible reforms to Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, today's panel will discuss consumer protection-focused legislation that aims to hold these companies accountable by enhancing transparency and promoting online safety. So these legislative hearings come after years of repeated bipartisan calls for online platforms to change their ways. Unfortunately, instead of meaningfully addressing the serious harms that these platforms can inflict on the American people and our children, social media companies continue to make minor changes only after negative press coverage or in preparation for an executive testifying before Congress. And they also refuse to become more transparent. In fact, we only actually learn what's really going on inside these massive corporations when a whistleblower steps forward, and those courageous actions are becoming exceedingly difficult. And even more disturbing, we're now seeing instances instances where these platforms are publicly shutting down efforts at transparency. So since these companies
WCSPFM Washington.
they're clearly not going to change on their own, Congress has to act, and today we'll discuss 7 bills that target different parts of the social media ecosystem to make platforms safer for users. Now, one of the best ways to make these companies more accountable is to make them more transparent. We'll discuss legislation that grants academic researchers and the Federal Trade Commission access to ad libraries, which will help to get us the data we need on how these companies are targeting users. Another bill will prohibit the use of algorithms that discriminate based on race, age, gender, ability, and other protected characteristics or methods that manipulate users into providing consent when they wouldn't otherwise. And this legislation will help prevent people using social media from losing rights protected under the law. We're considering a bill that will protect whistleblowers like former Facebook employee Frances Haugen, who testified at last week's legislative hearing. Whistleblowers help bring truth to light and are another way of helping ensure that companies are held accountable. And finally, we'll examine how to better protect our children online by banning certain design features directed at children and prohibiting the amplification of harmful content that's targeted at them.
Well, you're not computer
Legislative
programs, so
measures
fuck
that protect
you.
our children are